I'd say by now, the majority of the Terraria community has taken a look at some of the unobtainable items that are hidden in the game's files. Items like the pillar tools, the first fractal, the boring bow, the treasure pack for the lunatic cultist, and all of these have been covered in various videos over the years. Some have even been brought back to life through the use of mods. But I realized that there isn't a video that talks about scrapped ideas for Terraria, comments that the developers have made over the past 13 and a half years that for a variety of reasons never saw the light of day. Terraria is a pretty old game at this point, and it launched in a much smaller state. The game could have spun off in a variety of directions many times over the years, but as we all know today, the game is what it is. But there are so many things that were brought up by the developers that never made it to an update. And so today, we're going to take a trip down memory lane and talk about every scrapped idea for Terraria. Before we begin though, today's video is brought to you by War Thunder. War Thunder lets you experience dynamic battles across the globe with ground vehicles, aircrafts, and naval vehicles in this free-to-play multiplayer action game for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. The best part is, you can play the game exactly how you want. Break through the front line in a tank, cover ground from a helicopter, and participate in fighter battles among the clouds. With graphics, physics, and sounds that are constantly improving, and thanks to War Thunder's unique damage model, there's no need for health bars, so you can be fully immersed in the action. The Dance of Dragons update is also here, with a whole line of French combat boats now available in-game. Plus, you can experience the power of the American A-10 Thunderbolt II and the tactical bomber F-111. There's also dozens of community-requested improvements and 2 top-tier Chinese fighter jets for you to take to the sky. Download War Thunder for free by using the link in the description. All new players and those who haven't played War Thunder for half a year or more will receive some special bonuses, like 100,000 lions and premium vehicles. Be quick though, the American vehicle bonus season will end soon. Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Now the first thing I wanted to bring up is a developer update from Red himself only 12 days after the game launched. And it was here Red was trying to give a new community an idea of what Terraria updates might look like. He wrote, "In the long term, we'll not just be adding content, but new mechanics as well. Some of the ideas that we've been playing around with are pure PvP servers with team-based objectives, adding sloped/incline tiles to make the world smoother, new harder world types to continue game progression. Example, alien planets, alternate dimensions, evil worlds, etc. Enemy factions that will move into your world and build their own city. You can slaughter them while they're weak or let them build up their strength to get better rewards." I can understand why they never went ahead with this idea, but I really like it. I feel like it would definitely make the world feel more alive. He also wrote, "More events, volcanoes, earthquakes, more/improved invasions." Another idea was weather with seasons, snow, floods, etc. Well, we never got seasons. We did get snow, and flooding is something that's gonna pop up in a secret seed only 13 and a bit years later. Farming and stamina system that gives a bonus to player stats. Now this idea was reworked into the potion mechanic, although we never got a stamina system. And the final idea was mechanics for making traps and devices. Reading that, you could imagine it being so much more, but I will say this probably got turned into wiring. In another developer update shortly after the game's launch, the community manager at the time shared an old to-do list for things that could have been added to Terraria. And these were the ideas that were shared, and some of them did make it into the game. Cleansing pool makes ebon stone into stone and other evil items to non-evil items. NPCs with quests. Treasure finding item makes chests and pots glow. Reinforced doors, campfires, placeable flags, fishing poles/fish, background vistas, bushes, seasons, stalagmites and stalactites, and finally, weather. Now, out of that list, we did get the majority of these ideas, although obviously some were tweaked, like, for example, the cleansing pool isn't a cleansing pool. NPCs with quests, we did get a NPC that gives fishing quests, but I think the thing I'm most interested in is seasons. I really feel like the game could benefit from seasons, and I'm really surprised after all of these years it was never added to the game. Just after the launch of Terraria, Red did an interview, and one of the questions was, are there any plans to include more traditional RPG elements such as stats beside just health and mana, and possibly a leveling up system? Red responded, we've played around with the idea of having a leveling system, but we all agreed the gear progression was the way to go, which is interesting to read. At one point, there might have been a leveling system. In the same interview, one of the questions was, will you be able to teleport between houses in the future? Red responded, right now, we're playing around with the idea of adding a new NPC that teleports players for a fee. We did, of course, get the steampunker in 1.2 that sells teleporters and then later pylons, but we never got that teleporting NPC. I bet they would have looked really cool. One of the things that's pretty interesting about reading early interviews regarding Terraria is an emphasis on people asking for PvP features. Right now, we have teams, but that's pretty much about it. But it seems like back in 2011, people were really desperate for PvP. For example, in an interview in August 2011, someone asked, in the same way, can you give us any new information on future PvP? Relogic responded, PvP in Terraria is full of untapped potential and expanding it is something we're really looking forward to doing. We're hoping we can improve a whole bunch of new items that allow players to set up PvP objectives on the fly, such as capture the flag and capture points, as well as points and team-based spawning. Now, we never got anything like this, but of course we did get in Terraria 1.2 those large gems that were based on capture the gem, but that's as close as we got. During the development of Terraria 1.2 in the IRC chat room, Red once spoke about expanding Hell. When asked about this during an AMA before the launch of Terraria 1.2, Red responded, I'm thinking for future updates, Hell will get deeper with new levels and challenges you must overcome to continue downwards into the abyss. I'm not intending this to be a copy of Dante's Inferno, that was just the easiest way to describe my crazy thoughts to people. Since this was written, I can't think of anything that's been added to Terraria that almost fills in for this idea, because by this point, the Golem Temple had already been added, the dungeon was obviously already in the game. We did get a small expansion to Hell in 1.4.4 with those new blocks and trees, but we never got this expansion to Hell that took you deeper in the world, and I feel like it sounds quite cool. Also during that AMA, somebody asked, the wiki mentions you had plans to include alternate world modes such as alien planets and alternate dimensions, yet I've not heard anything since. Did these end up not working out, or are they a delicious feature we've yet to discover? This comment is referring to that development blog that I spoke about earlier. Red responded though, I have added a lot of things from that list of features, but decided that others would not work well. I've always wanted to add an alternate world option, so who knows? Now, I don't know for certain what Red meant by an alternate world option. Of course, we never got an alien planet, but I do have my own personal theory on why Terraria players were never bound for the stars, even though this idea was brought up by Red in the same month Terraria was released. I do think if this idea was done right by Relogic, I think it could actually be really cool, and I'd definitely be down to see this in the future. Now, one of the most infamous scrapped ideas for Terraria was the original version of the Moon Lord. In that same AMA, somebody asked, Red, you thought about making possible to get the Moon Lord and or fight an alien invasion? In Terraria, of course. And Red responded, I have thought about bringing the moon to you, and have always wanted to make an alien invasion. Now, we do know that the idea of bringing the moon to the player was scrapped, and back in 2020, Chrono gave us more insight into this. The Moon Lord began as a concept to replace an old idea called Moon Boss. He went through multiple iterations based on different themes, but overall it was inspired by insects and sea life, aside from a certain great one. The final design chosen was an amalgamation of a couple different ideas from previous scrap designs. Part of the design process was to include elements of previous bosses such as the eye and the brain of Cthulhu. Another infamous scrapped idea is the candy biome. During an AMA in 2020, Relogic actually shared quite a few scrapped ideas. The swamp was intended to be an alternate to the jungle. The initial design was done prior to us adding a lot of new content to the jungle, and it ended up being too large for an alternate to do. The candy biome was going to be an alternate to the Hallowed. Had this happened, it would have been similar to how Crimson and Corruption work, where you would only get one. I find this so fascinating because back in 2014, somebody did go ahead and make a mod as an alternate to the Hallowed called the Confectionery Biome. I have no memory of Red revealing the Candy Biome or the Confectionery Biome before 2020. Maybe he did, maybe it's been lost to time, but I find that so strange. And it's the same with the swamp. Until this AMA, I had no idea that Relogic ever intended to have an alternate to the jungle. Now in 2022, the Candy Biome was brought up again when Red shared some very rough concept art for what Terraria 2's world map could look like. And you can see in the bottom right, the Confectionery Biome, or at least I assume it is. It does look like an ice cream. In that same AMA, when asked about scrapped content, Jim wrote, "One example I can think of is pistons. I had an idea for mechanical pistons to add that worked in a certain manner and could be simplified in length, but wouldn't work well in the engine. Another one was back in 1.2, which was elevators. That wasn't easy to pull off, and from that spawned ropes instead." Now the final one I want to talk about is one that drives me a little wild because I think the game would really benefit from it, and I really hope they add it in a future update. You've probably noticed that with certain world generations, you can get an ocean with a tunnel that leads to absolutely nothing. Well, back in 2022, Red confirmed, "I had plans for that hole, but ran out of time." I don't know, maybe we can spice up the ocean a bit without it being an expensive task. Genuinely, if I could implement any of these scrapped ideas, it would probably be this one. The ocean is still lacking in content. We are getting orcas, and that's pretty cool, but I do want to see more in the ocean. And then, of course, I also want to see seasons. Like, Terraria with seasons would look so good. I didn't know they teased it all the way back in 2011. I will say, one of the things I loved about researching this topic is that for every scrapped idea, you could see why the developers never went ahead with the idea in the first place, or they simply just explained why they didn't do it. I bet you there are so many ideas we don't even know about, because Terraria really does have infinite potential. But I want to know, after hearing all of these scrapped ideas, what would you most like to see in Terraria? Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.